Have you ever had a day where nothing terrible happened, but everything felt heavy? A day where small things went wrong, and somehow they felt bigger than they should. The cup tipped over, the plan changed, the road felt longer than usual, and suddenly you felt tired. Not in your body, but in your heart. Most people think motivation comes from winning, from success, from things going right. But what if the most important lessons come from the moments we wish never happened? What if the spilled water, the muddy shoes, the broken plan were not mistakes, but quiet teachers? This is not a story about becoming rich. This is not a story about being perfect. This is a story about a small boy, on an ordinary day, learning something that changed the way he faced life. And maybe, if you listen closely, it will change the way you face yours too. Let me tell you about a boy named Ari. Ari woke up that morning before the sun fully rose. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels soft, not empty. Light slipped gently through the window, resting on the floor like it had nowhere else to be. Ari sat up slowly. He didn't feel excited. He didn't feel sad. He just felt normal. And sometimes, that's when life begins to teach us something. That morning, Ari was asked to help. Nothing difficult, nothing important, just a simple task. Carry a bucket of water from one side of the yard to the other. The bucket was old, the handle was thin, the water inside moved quietly, as if it was listening. Ari wrapped his fingers around the handle and lifted. At first, everything felt fine. One step, then another. But halfway across the yard, his grip slipped. Not much, just enough. The bucket tilted, and in one sudden moment, the water spilled. It rushed out, spreading across the ground, disappearing into the dirt. The bucket hit the floor with a hollow sound. Ari froze. His heart beat faster. He stared at the empty bucket, then at the wet ground, then at his hands. 1,000 thoughts rushed in. I wasn't careful enough. This is my fault. I should have held it tighter. Have you ever noticed how quickly the mind becomes loud when something goes wrong? Ari felt it too. He didn't look up, he didn't move. He waited for anger, for disappointment, for someone to say he had failed. But instead, there was silence. The water soaked into the ground. The world kept breathing. Nothing rushed him, nothing shouted. Slowly, Ari knelt down. He picked up the bucket. It felt lighter now, much lighter. He began to clean the ground, moving slowly, not because he was told to, but because rushing suddenly didn't make sense anymore. As he worked, his breathing softened. The tight feeling in his chest loosened, and for the first time that day, Ari noticed something strange. Yes, the water was gone, but so was the rush. So was the pressure. So was the hurry. The bucket was empty, and somehow, so was his worry. Ari paused. He looked at the bucket again, then at the ground, and a quiet thought passed through his mind. Not loud, not dramatic, just gentle. What did this make lighter? He didn't know the answer yet, but something inside him felt calmer just for asking. And without realizing it, Ari had taken his first step toward a new way of thinking. Not by winning, not by fixing everything, but by noticing what remained after things went wrong. After the spilled bucket, Ari did not rush. That was new. He stepped outside, the empty bucket resting by the door, the morning air cool against his skin. The path ahead was familiar. He had walked it many times. 2 ways led forward. One was clean, longer, safe. The other was shorter, uneven, soft from last night's rain. Ari hesitated. Normally, he would choose speed, finish fast, move on. But something from earlier lingered. The stillness, the pause. So he chose the shorter path. At first, it seemed fine. The ground looked firm enough. The sun had begun drying the surface. One step, then another, and then his foot sank. Not suddenly, not dramatically, slowly. The earth gave way and mud wrapped around his shoe. Ari stopped. He looked down. Brown water crept up the side, heavy and cold. A familiar feeling rose in his chest. Why did I choose this path? I should have known better. The old voice was back, the one that rushes, the one that blames. But Ari didn't pull his foot out right away. He stood still. The mud held him there. And for the first time, being stuck didn't feel like punishment. The birds kept singing. The wind moved gently through the trees. Life wasn't rushing him. Ari slowly lifted his foot free. The shoe was heavy now. Dirt clung to it. He sighed. Then he remembered the question. Not loudly, not urgently, just softly. What did this make lighter? He didn't know why he asked it again. But as he wiped the mud away, he noticed something. He was no longer rushing. The hurry was gone. His steps became slower, more careful. And strangely, the walk felt easier. The path was messy, but his mind was clearer. Sometimes the ground becomes soft not to trap us, but to slow us down before we fall harder. By midday, the sky began to shift. Clouds gathered quietly, layer by layer, without asking anyone's permission. Ari noticed them, but kept walking. He had plans. Simple ones, small ones, but they mattered to him. The wind picked up. The first drop of rain landed on his arm, then another, then many. Rain began to fall, not fast, not angry, just steady. Ari stopped. He looked up at the sky. A familiar disappointment crept in. Not today, he thought. I had something planned. For a moment, he felt the urge to fight it, to complain, to wish it away. But the rain didn't listen. It never does. So Ari did something different. He stepped under a tree and waited. The rain tapped gently on leaves, creating a soft rhythm. The air cooled. The world slowed. Time stretched. And in that waiting, Ari noticed something he usually missed. The smell of wet earth, the sound of water meeting ground, the calm that arrives when there is nothing left to do. His plan was gone, but the pressure to hurry was gone too. Ari smiled slightly, and again the question returned. What did this make lighter? The answer came quietly. The rain had washed away his need to control the day. He wasn't behind, he wasn't late, he was exactly where he was, and that was enough. Sometimes life cancels our plans not to disappoint us, but to give us back our breath. The rain passed. The sky cleared slowly, as if it needed time to decide what came next. By the time Ari reached school, the ground still held traces of water, small puddles, darkened soil, footprints fading as quickly as they appeared. The day moved forward. Lessons, voices, steps through hallways, and then lunchtime arrived. Ari carried his bowl carefully. He was thinking about many things: the bucket, the mud, the rain. He wasn't fully here, and that's when it happened. The bowl slipped. It didn't fall all at once. It tipped, paused, then dropped. Food spilled across the ground. The sound was louder than it needed to be. Ari froze. Heat rushed to his face. This time, it wasn't just a mistake. This time, people were watching. The old feeling returned, stronger. Everyone saw. This is embarrassing. I wish I could disappear. For a moment, the world felt very big, and Ari felt very small. He waited for laughter, for pointing fingers, for that sharp feeling of being judged. But something unexpected happened. Someone stepped closer, then another, not to stare, but to help. A hand reached down and picked up the bowl. Another voice said quietly, "Here, you can share mine." No one rushed. No one made it worse. The moment softened. Ari's chest loosened. As they sat together, eating slowly, Ari felt something shift. The loss of his lunch had opened something else. Connection. Kindness. He looked at the empty space on the ground where the food had been. Then he asked it again, almost without thinking. What did this make lighter? The answer was clearer now. It made him less alone. Sometimes what falls away makes room for what really matters. That evening, the world grew still again. The day was nearly over. Ari sat alone by the window, watching the sky turn soft and pale. The events of the day returned to him, not loudly, but gently. The spilled bucket, the muddy path, the rain, the dropped bowl. So many small things. So many moments that once would have ruined his day, yet somehow they hadn't. Ari rested his chin in his hands, and for the first time, he didn't rush to understand. He just sat. In that quiet, the question rose again, not as a reaction, but as a habit forming. What did this make lighter? He asked it slowly. The spilled bucket had made his rush lighter. The muddy path had slowed his steps. The rain had released his plans. The dropped lunch had brought kindness closer. None of the problems disappeared, but something else did. The heaviness. Ari realized then life hadn't become easier. He had become gentler with it, and that changed everything. He smiled softly, not because the day was perfect, but because he no longer needed it to be. The question stayed with him as the night settled in, not as an answer, but as a companion. And somewhere deep inside, Ari understood something important. Life will always have spills, but peace comes from how we carry the bucket. The next morning arrived without announcing anything special. No lessons written in the sky, no warnings, just another day. And yet, something was different. Ari stepped into it calmly. He forgot a book at home, noticed only after walking halfway. The old Ari would have groaned, turned around angrily, or blamed himself the entire way back. This time, he stopped. He breathed. The mistake was already made. And so, quietly, the question returned. What did this make lighter? He thought for a moment. It made him walk slower. It gave him time to think. It broke the rush before it could begin. He turned back, not annoyed, just present. Later, he arrived late to class. The door opened softly. Eyes looked up. A familiar tightness tried to return. But Ari didn't run from it. He stood still. He nodded. And the moment passed. Nothing broke. Nothing collapsed. The fear had been heavier than the mistake itself. And now, even that fear felt lighter. At lunch, he said the wrong thing. A small silence followed. Not painful, just awkward. Once he would have replayed it all day. This time, he let it go. The question rose again, and with it, a gentle understanding. Every small mistake was no longer an enemy. It was a pause, a reminder, a chance to loosen the grip. By the end of the day, nothing remarkable had happened, and yet Ari felt strangely free. The mistakes were still there, but they no longer owned him. Something else began to change. Not around Ari, but within him. On the way home, he saw another boy trip and drop his things. Books scattered, papers slid across the ground. People walked past. Ari didn't. He knelt down and helped gather the pages. Their eyes met. A quiet thank you was exchanged. No speeches, no lessons spoken aloud, just understanding. Later, he heard someone raise their voice in frustration. Once, he might have pulled away. This time, he noticed the tension behind the words, the weight they were carrying. He listened instead of reacting, and the moment softened. Ari began to realize something important. Everyone is carrying something. A full bucket, a muddy shoe, a broken plan. And most of the time, people aren't upset at life. They're tired of holding it so tightly. As Ari walked, the world felt different. Not because it had changed, but because he had stopped fighting it. And again, the question appeared, not just for himself, but for others too. What would become lighter if we were a little more gentle? The answer wasn't clear, but the feeling was. Peace spreads quietly, and it always begins with one person choosing to carry less. That evening, Ari did not hurry. The day had finished, but he felt no need to race it. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the road. Each step echoed softly, as if the world itself was walking beside him. He noticed things he usually missed. A leaf drifting slowly to the ground, the sound of distant voices fading into quiet, the warmth of light resting on walls and trees. Nothing extraordinary, and yet everything felt full. Ari remembered how he used to walk this path, fast, focused only on what came next. Today, there was no next to chase, only now. He thought about the bucket again, how heavy it had felt before the water spilled, how light it became afterward. The memory stayed with him, not as regret, but as understanding. As he walked, a gentle thought formed. Maybe life doesn't ask us to carry everything perfectly. Maybe it asks us to notice when it's time to put something down. The road didn't change, but Ari's steps did. They became softer, more steady. And for the first time, the walk home felt like rest. That night, Ari lay quietly in bed. The day replayed itself, not loudly, not with judgment, but like a calm river moving past him. The mistakes, the pauses, the moments that once felt wrong. They were all still there, but they no longer felt heavy. Ari realized something important. Life had not given him answers. It had given him a way to respond. The question, simple as it was, had changed how he met the world. What did this make lighter? It didn't erase problems, it softened them. It didn't promise happiness, it created space. Ari understood now. Peace does not come from having control. It comes from letting go of what tightens the heart. From choosing gentleness over resistance. From allowing life to be imperfect and still meaningful. He smiled faintly as his eyes grew heavy. Tomorrow would bring new spills, new mud, new plans that would change. And that was okay. Because now, Ari knew how to meet them. Not with force, not with fear, but with a quieter strength. The kind that makes life lighter to carry. The next day did not arrive gently. It arrived with a problem. A small one, but familiar. Something didn't work as planned. A mistake, a delay, a moment that could have easily pulled Ari back into frustration. For a brief second, the old reaction stirred. The tightening, the urge to resist, the thought that said, "Not again." Ari noticed it, and that made all the difference. He stopped. Not because everything was calm, but because he chose to be. The world did not pause with him. Time kept moving. Sounds continued. Life went on. But inside, something softened. Ari took a breath, then another, and quietly, as if greeting an old friend, the question appeared. What did this make lighter? He didn't rush the answer. He didn't need to. Just asking was enough. The weight in his chest eased. The mistake remained, but the struggle didn't. Ari understood something now. Life would never stop spilling buckets. Plans would change, paths would get muddy, moments would fall apart. Not because life is unfair, but because life is alive, and fighting it only made the load heavier. So Ari did not fight. He adjusted his grip. He carried what mattered, and let the rest spill away. If you've been listening quietly, maybe something in this story felt familiar. Maybe you remembered your own spilled bucket, a moment that didn't ruin your life, but somehow weighed on you anyway. Let this be a reminder. Not every problem is a loss. Not every mistake is a failure. Sometimes it's life asking you to slow down, to loosen your grip, to breathe. You don't have to fix everything today. You don't have to carry everything perfectly. When things go wrong, try asking one gentle question. What has this made lighter? You may not find an answer right away, but you might find peace. Thank you for walking with Ari. If this story brought you calm, carry it with you into your next moment. And remember, life is not asking you to be flawless. It's asking you to be gentle with what you're holding. Good night, and let the weight fall away.